So welcome everyone. This is our African American Leadership Series. Today we are highlighting Cha Jones, who has been a phenomenal force out there representing women of color living abroad for several years. She runs Expats Women of Color, and I am Mercedes Diane Griffin Forbes. I am the host. I'm the CEO of Diane Griffin Enterprises and the founder of the Mercedes Power Foundation for Women and Girls. And I am so pleased to have you all here with us today. And I am here to welcome Cha. Yay!
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, I'm excited to have you. It's been a while since you and I have had an opportunity to connect.
Yes, like some months.
Yes, been many months. So Cha and I actually met back in 2017. She did a conference was it Louisville, Kentucky? Where was it again? Memphis. No, Nashville. Nashville, because I remember I went to the Johnny Cash Museum. Yes, it was in Nashville. My gosh, I'm getting old. It was such a great conference, though. I do remember the conference. I remember everything about it, all the speakers, all the panels. I myself did a panel on how to travel light, which was a lot of fun. I was really shocked at how many people were interested in my topic. I was like, oh my God, I don't have enough seats for all these people. But it was a phenomenal experience. And ever since, she and I have stayed in touch and been friends. And so, I'm really excited to have her on today. Let me give her an opportunity to introduce herself and tell us all a little bit about her work and what she does.
Sure. So I'm Cha Jones, and I'm an intercultural and expat or intercultural expat coach. I do transformation coaching as well. And I've been doing this for, it seems like many moons, but basically after I moved and lived in Korea for 3.5 years, I left in the end of 2008 and ended up coming back to the United States in 2012 and decided I really wanted to help people experience the world however they would like. And so that took me on many different journeys. And actually, you and I also went to the same graduate school. So we went to SIT up in Vermont, where I got my master's in intercultural communication. So I love working with people who are trying to experience different cultures, who are moving, who are traveling. And so that also allowed me to start my organization, which is Expat Women of Color. We are on Facebook. We have about 5,600 followers right now who interact. Most of them are women, Black women, but we don't discriminate. So we accept all colors, whatever you define as a color for yourself. We are willing to accept you. And most of these women are traveling as self-identified expats, meaning that they are basically nomadic and just kind of traveling however they see fit. Some of them do have contracts. Some of them are just going to a country and then establishing their visas and starting to work based off of, learning the terrain as they go. But we do have people who are in the military. We have military spouses. We also have people who are studying abroad, as well as corporate expats as well.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, I think the reason why you came across my radar was that school connection. I think I found you on LinkedIn and your event was suggested. You know how they give you the suggesting things you may be interested in. And then when I saw that you went to SIT, I was like, oh, I got to connect to her because there are not a lot of African Americans that went to SIT. We're an anomaly. So when you meet, someone that looks like you that went to that school, you got to connect. You just got to. So both of us have spent significant amounts of time abroad. I've never lived overseas for years. The longest I've stayed out in one chunk was a year, and that's when I lived in China. And that was a period before China was a part of the WTO, and they were just converting to a capitalist economy and just starting to open up to the Western world. So at the time that I was there, it was still very virgin. It was still very China for Chinese. And I was actually the first foreign teacher that my school ever had, and definitely the first Black person that most people in that village had ever seen in their entire lives. So for me, it was a wonderful experience, you know, life-changing. I went when I was like 24, 25. So it was a good point in my life when I was really open to that type of experience as well. I know that nowadays people are also looking to have similar experience because a lot of people are frustrated with, you know, life in America, particularly African Americans. They're just like, I'm over it, I'm ready to go. And then there are other people who just want to experience, you know, something new and, you know, challenge themselves with, you know, a whole different environment. So tell me a little bit about your experience personally living overseas, and one, what made you decide to go that route, and what are some of the lessons that you learned from doing that?
So my experience, or what actually took me to Korea, is really what I believe in. I really believe that I can manifest anything in my life. And so I literally sat on my couch one day. I had been downsized in my last position. I was a regional marketing coordinator and training for a dental management company. And I had just got my certification in emotional intelligence coaching, and just things weren't moving as I wanted them to. And I was just kind of frustrated. So I sat on my couch and was like, I really want to see the world, and literally took a nap. And a couple hours later, checked my email. Since I was in the job market, I got a recruiter that sent me some information and said, you may want to look at this. And literally it was a job to go to Korea. And I was like, people do this. I thought it was like really weird. I thought it was interesting. So I looked at all of the websites and everything, and I was like, really? People like just pack their bags? And I was like, oh, this must be, and I was like 32 at the time. So I was like, no. I'm like, and I'm used to corporate life. So I was like, yeah, that's interesting. And I deleted it and went on about my business. But literally the next day, I believe in synchronicity. So the next day, my girlfriend called and she was like, sit down. I'm about to do something crazy. And the only person I know that's crazy enough to do it with me would be you. And I was like, okay, I don't know what this, we not robbing banks. So she was like, no, I'm going to Japan. I've been talking to a recruiter, and literally I can go with another person. So I choose you. And I was like, yeah, why would I go to Japan? And what would I be doing in Japan? How am I going to live in Japan? And literally she was just like, we're going to go to Japan to teach. And I was like, teach? Yeah, I forewent that like my third semester in college. I was like, no, I'm good on that. So she's like, no, really. So I told her to send me the information. She sent the information. I applied. They called me back. We did the interview literally all that day. And they were like, oh, you qualify. We want to send you forward to the school. But guess what? We don't have any more jobs in Japan. Would you be willing to go to Korea? And I was like,
back where you
this
started.
is the second time this week Korea has come up. Something's trying to send me there. Just be willing, ready, and let's go. So I was like, sure, let's go. And literally a month and a half later, I was in the Seoul Incheon airport saying hello and waiting for a ride. And that's really what got me to Korea. My experience in Korea was wonderful. It was life-changing. It ultimately changed the trajectory of my life. But I took every opportunity that I could to just be open to the experience and allow things to happen. My first year, I felt like I had went back to college. And I was like, am I like reliving college? Like, this is not supposed to be this easy. And going to clubs till 6 in the morning, I was like, yeah, I can't be doing this. Like, I should be doing something else in my life. But it was just fun. And the experiences, they would just come. I would just accept the lesson. And it helped me to be open to everything that was coming towards me. And I got to meet some wonderful Korean people. I got to meet some Japanese people. I got to just really experience cultures. And I met all kinds of expats from all over the world. And that's how I started the organization. But I mean, I kind of really re-identified myself in that experience through the journey because it was so eye-opening. And there were very frustrating moments. So I don't want to sugarcoat the experience, because there were some moments where I just felt like this didn't just happen. Or like I was on the subway one day and a man basically came and literally there was only 4 people on this particular train. And he literally came over and like knocked my knee down because I felt it was like I had crossed my legs. And he said something, and you could tell it was very negative. And then all of a sudden, he just hit me, and I was like, "I'm about to go to jail," because he is old. And in Korean culture, they really respect elders, and I respect elders too, but not ones that just walk up to me, hit me. So I was like, okay, if I hit him back, I'm probably gonna get deported. So I had to really think it all through. But in that moment, I found myself in tears because I was frustrated because I couldn't speak the language and I couldn't curse him out. I was frustrated because I couldn't hit him back. I was frustrated because nobody else came to my defense. I was frustrated. There were so many reasons I was frustrated, but I found myself like, is this really happening to me? I didn't do anything to anybody. And I felt like I was helpless, but at the same time, I wanted to empower myself. And from there, and I had already started like learning Korean, but I made sure that I at least had some curse words in my arsenal. So, I mean, that experience, it was a moment in time where I just had to stop and like kind of reevaluate some things. And then I had some conversations with some Koreans who were like, this is what you do if this happens. But, I tried to respect their culture, and I tried to like take it like, who am I? What was I doing? Why did this happen to me? And then kind of evaluate from there. And then I would have other experiences that would then alter that. Like I was on a bus one time, and what should have been 45 to an hour ride, 45 minutes to an hour ride, it ends up being 2 hours, and it was on New Year's Eve. And I had a Korean lady basically like tell one of the younger Koreans to move over and give me the seat so that I wouldn't be standing in my high heels. And I was dressed to the T on my way to go hang out for New Year's. And that ride ended up being like 2.5 hours. And so when I tried to give her some money for accommodating me, she basically took my hand and put it on her heart and then put it on my heart and said, my heart to your heart. And I cried because I was like,
that's so beautiful.
You didn't have to do that. And I was like, please, it's like, and I kept saying, and my grandmother would want me to do this. And she was like, Ande. And I was like, no, but I have to. And then she just like wiped my tears and then like did like this and gave me a hug. And I was like, there's some good Koreans out there. But literally those experiences happen, and I just always kind of felt like I had some guidance in the experience that was helping me. And I just was open. So, I mean, that was a long answer.
That's all right. We're here to hear your story. It's all about you today. We want to hear your story. So I love that. It's very interesting. I know, like, I personally feel that most people, no matter where they are, no matter who they are good people. I don't think most people are walking around operating, trying to hurt other people. And I try to operate from that paradigm whenever I'm dealing with people, until they do something that makes it quite clear that we got a problem. But yeah, I mean, being in a foreign country, especially when you don't speak the language and things happen to you that you don't understand, can be very jarring. I remember when I first went to China, I didn't know any Chinese, and I was in a remote village. I wasn't in any type of city by any stretch of the imagination. It was my school, the river, the town, the mountain. That was it. And even though the town was a town of 100,000 people, that's considered small for China,
Right.
everybody lived in tall, white tile buildings, and everybody were farmers, and it was just a whole different world. But there was not a lot of like escape. There weren't other Americans. My roommate was the only other American, and she was Chinese American. So, and she was in her 50s. So she was there, but we were still kind of worlds apart. I think that, your story really like points out like how important it is to empower yourself. If you tried to learn the language, you sought out other people who can help you and give you advice. Because when you're in that situation and you just, you don't know what to do, it can be very overwhelming. In terms of your work with supporting other women who are going abroad and facing similar challenges, do you incorporate those types of lessons in your work?
I do. One of the things when we first started, like at the time we were really like basically a lifestyle brand with blogs, and we had like 10 different bloggers in 10 different countries, and we were just trying to give a African, well, not really, a women of color experience throughout the world, like as expats. It didn't matter where you were coming from, but just that you were actually traveling and living abroad. And one experience happened to a young lady where she was on the bus and there was a law change. And when you live in a foreign country, it's not like you're living in your country, so you're not going to go to the newspaper unless you really, really speak and read the language. Right. And so there was like a literal fare change. And she got on the bus and basically paid the normal fare, which I think was, and she was in Korea as well, it was like 90 won. And when she sat down, the bus driver didn't say anything, people didn't say anything. And literally, he just drove directly to the police station, and they arrested her because, and it was like a 10 cent, what would be equivalent to 10 cents in the United States of fare change. And so we ended up having to get her an expat lawyer and I had just met one the day before, so that she wouldn't be like going to jail. Like they wanted to end her contract that day. She had to have a co-teacher show up. It was like a Saturday morning. So at that time, we just really wanted to make sure that we helped people who were living in foreign countries who were going through difficulties have an outlet. We also wanted to be a voice of reason for people who just really didn't understand certain things. We also wanted to be a navigator so that people knew, okay, you need a visa. If you're in some countries, maybe you can't get the visa before you leave, but you can get it there, but you might have to do a visa run. What does that mean? Because people will find themselves in very bad situations that could have been avoided had they asked the right questions.
Been in one of those situations.
Right. But then you don't know what the right questions are in most cases because it's not your normal situation.
Right.
So we end up, doing a lot of that, like trial by error. But for the most part, we really wanted to just kind of be a network for women to help, like, learn if you're going from one country to the next country, what should you not do? Or if I'm going to France, then can I connect with some other people who look like me? Not necessarily just to congregate and, fraternize, but like guidance. Or, hey, I've even had people like, yo, you live in France, I'm coming there, can I crash on your couch? And it just be that simple. So, my goal was just to kind of provide women of color who were trying to travel the world, see something different, have other people who look like them, or people who didn't look like them that have the same kind of connectivity and desires to be able to kind of help navigate situations. And if you become friends, great. And so it has allowed me to meet a lot of wonderful people who are doing some amazing things. And just, I like to kind of connect people. And so it works well.
Okay, cool. So now, In terms of your business, Expats Women of Color, why did you name it Women of Color? Is it because you're trying to reach out to multiple ethnicities? Because, you know, there's a lot of conversation right now in particular about, are we an organization for Black people and what does that mean? Or are we an organization for people of color and what does that mean? What color are you talking about? So in terms of like your branding and how you came up with that name and deciding, you know, how you want to target the different people that you work with, how did you make that decision?
So at that time, I was really like re-identifying who I am, right? So, you know, I went to Korea like I'm Black and I'm proud and I'm a Black person and da 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 and I'm African American and all these other titles. And then I remember meeting a Pakistani guy who like it was him and his friend I met kind of like my second week. And we just became really, really good friends. And I remember one time they told me, it was like, you're not a Black girl. And I was like, last time I checked, I am. I was like, do you think I'm mixed? I'm not mixed. And so he was like, no, you're American. And I was like, coming from America, I don't feel very American. I don't know what that means. Like, I can't identify with being American. I definitely can identify with being an African American or a Black person, but I don't really know what that means. And we had this long conversation. He was like, no, you are an American citizen. Nowhere other than in America does anyone see you as anything other. And I was like, what does that mean? But it really opened my eyes to the fact that, you know, I have a passport that's blue with an American, you know, map inside that really states my nationality is American, right? And that it means something. And that's truly my passport, not just in the sense of a literal term, but figuratively and literally, it really is my passport. And so I started to kind of re-identify, like, I'm American and I just happen to be Black. And I started trying to re-identify. So as I started this organization, you know, I was sitting around a table because I would have brunches every Saturday and it would just be all kinds of expats. And there would be Koreans, there would be South Africans, there would be Europeans, and we all had different shades, but we all had a similar experience because we were all traveling outside of our countries of nationality. But, you know, we all had varying experiences based off of how we perceive certain things. And so I didn't want to be like, this is the Black club, because it wasn't. And I had people from everywhere, but at the same time, majority of us all were of color. Like, even, you know, whether you're Korean, Chinese, you know, none of us were Caucasian. But even if you're white, that's still a color, right? In my book, it's part of the crayon. so I literally was like, if it's in the crayon box, then it works. And I don't define what color means. And I've even had a discussion a couple times in the group on Facebook where people are like, why is this person in here? They're not of and they don't have authority. Wait a minute. I didn't define what color was. And this is not about what we perceive as color. As long as you respect the description and you can meet the mission, then I think you have value. But I also want you to be clear that we're talking about different experiences and we want you to respect the experiences, and you can be an ally, you can stand with us on whatever we're dealing with, but at the same time, there are some things that I think make us different. But that doesn't mean that we all can't operate in the same or be very fluid in the same space. And so that's kind of my thought on that. And it's not about race. It's really about mentality and how you perceive yourself and how you want to be perceived in the world, and go with it. like identities change.
Right, right. That is very true. I remember, so when I first started doing work abroad, it was only in Asia. It was China, then Taiwan, then Korea. And it wasn't until 2009 when I started doing a lot of development work in Africa that it really hit me how American I really am. Because, I grew up, I'm bicultural, I'm Colombian and African American. And those two identities have always been how I define myself. I'm Afro-Latino. And for me, like going to Africa for the first time was like, oh, I'm going to the motherland. And other people that I was working with, the first country I went to was Nigeria. They were like, what are y'all talking about motherland? Like, what is all this about? Like, they were just so confused. They could not understand Afrocentric African Americans. And so I'm trying to explain to them, our struggle and, why we need to, embrace our African ancestry. And he was looking at me like, you don't get it. So the longer I spent, time in the continent and going to various different countries, the more it really started to like resonate. Like, I am truly an American. There are definite cultural carryovers, I think, with both Latin America and the United States when it comes to African people and the diaspora and the cultural, things that we have brought with us. But there are very distinct ways of operating and thinking and seeing the world that's truly American. And I do think sometimes, you get so overwhelmed by life here and oppression and racism and all the things that you deal with when you are a minority that when you leave here, then that's when you really start to realize like, oh, I guess I do belong there. I didn't know. My work really has taught me a lot about self-identity and how I define myself. I'm truly a humanist. That's my guiding principle. I believe in the oneness of humanity, no matter, what we are in the world. At the end of the day, we're all people. And I think that is something that travel can really drive, in terms of how you see yourself and how you see yourself as a part of a larger human experience. In terms of dealing with building community and organizing an organization that's specifically geared at supporting people who venture out into different environments, how do you feel you as an organizer function to help people understand their ability to, I guess, redefine themselves and adapt to wherever it is that they're going, with the understanding that at the end of the day, we're all people, we're all human?
I don't know that that's my responsibility as an organizer. For me, I kind of really want a really organic environment within the confines of the space. I want people to, I feel like it's your journey. You can define what your journey is. Like, I'm not your overseer, your master. I'm not none of that. And I don't want to be. And so I really get scared when people be like, I just really want you to do X. Nah, I need you to have some accountability because that doesn't work for me. Like, so I really want it to be an organic experience, and I want people to identify where they are. I've had people who started off on this journey one way, and 2 years into the game, they're a totally different person. And life experiences, if you're truly living, that should occur. Like, you should not be the same person I met you at. It's like, you're not growing, something's wrong. I don't really want to be a part of that.
It's amazing how many people that happens to.
And that's where I exit. I'd be like, yeah, I can't because that's too much. But I think it's, we're all on a journey. We're all trying to get somewhere. We cross them paths as we go. And I think that should be really organic, and it should allow for you to do what is best for you. I just want to facilitate and connect people where I can connect people and guide people where I can guide people. I don't want to be the master of anything. I really, other than myself and my experiences. But if people need guidance and resources, I really want to be able to, lend that. But at the same time, I really want people to have an organic experience.
So would you say that your role then is really more about creating the infrastructure to help them navigate that experience? How would you define your
Yes.
role?
So those who really need help and feel like they need a coach, I'm definitely here to facilitate that and coach them through the process, help them get all of the resources that they need to prepare to leave a certain country. I work with a lot of people who are like really about to become like a teacher abroad, and they need to get their paperwork together, and they need to look at a contract and know that the contract is straight and that they're not going to be in some okey doke situation in Istanbul, right? So that I want to be able to do. There are situations where there are people who just need to be pointed toward the right website, and or they need to be connected to the right person, and I happen to know a person that can help them. So I have people who are traveling, who have gone to Korea, and then they're like, oh, I don't know anybody. Well, here's a whole organization of people who live in Korea who look just like you, and they're all trying to do something similar. So reach out to them. So I just kind of be the conduit, like I do in life, just connect people and be a resource and guide them. And if I can assist them professionally, I will. If it's just something as simple as connecting them to the right person, I'll do that as well.
Awesome, awesome. So do you find that most people are looking for an expat community when they go abroad? Because I know for me, like, I go because I want to get away. I don't really want to be around any other Americans. Um, is that something that a lot of people are really interested in?
I think a lot of people are interested, especially, most people don't leave their 20 square blocks, right? So they live in this silo their whole entire life. And if they travel, they're traveling like to be with some family or friends somewhere where they know someone. So a lot of times when people have decided to go on this excursion, they want something that's safe and similar. Now, that's not a space you have to stay in. You can be an explorer and want to go do a bunch of solo trips and things, but having a resource to know, okay, I can contact these people over here and I can have an outlet if I want something that's very similar to where I came from. I think that that's a good resource to have. I think it also, you get homesick sometimes. Sometimes you can be on a 3 to 5 year stint, especially if you're in the military. And oftentimes, like people who are in the military, they are very similar to the people at home in the sense that they don't go off the military base because they have everything. So there's no reason. And so they're living in that controlled environment. And oftentimes they want to get out that controlled environment. Yet they still want some control. So they want to still connect with people who are very similar to them. And so if nothing else, we are able to provide that. Now, if you, and I was like this, I did a lot of solo traveling. Like, I don't really want anything hold me down. I don't want to sit and wait for you. I don't want to be negotiating what we eating. I don't want to do all that. So I'm on my own terms, and then I holler at you when I feel like it. So I think a lot of people are like that as well, where they just want a resource and an outlet. If, for instance, I get in Korea or get in Japan or the UAE and I still want to have some connectivity, I have that as a resource.
That's interesting that you mentioned people who are in the military, because I actually don't consider people's in the military's travel experience as legitimate travel, because I'm like, you're on base. You're not really with the people. You're not really experiencing the culture. At least most people aren't anyway. And sometimes I actually get annoyed when I start talking about, like, when I was in the village and I was working with these people and I was doing this, and then you come at me, well, yeah, I traveled too, and I was at the base in Tokyo. Like, we're not talking the same language. We're not talking the same language.
Well, I've met those, and then I have met those who have literally, even though they're in the military, they're stationed in Okinawa, they're going to take advantage of the fact that I can get to this country, and this country,
That's
and
wonderful.
I'm going to go off the beaten path because I know I'm living in a controlled environment. So every time I can experience the culture, I am going to. Now, is that 90% of the population? Probably not, right? It's probably like 5. And so their, military experience is totally different. It's only those who are interested in where they are and the people around them that step outside the base. I mean, I found it very eye-opening that some people had never even been off the base. Like, never been off the base ever. It was like, oh yeah, I got my shoes shined down the street. I was like, so you never experienced, they don't know how to take the subway. What's wrong with you? Like, why do you want to live like that? But, they're in the military. That says a lot.
Yeah, I come from a military family, so yeah, I'm very familiar with that sort. And so, yeah, it's good, though, that you have been able to help people who have tried to go off base and actually take advantage of the fact that they are in another country, because I do think it's a lost opportunity. If you're so far away and you don't even take time to get to know the place that you're at and the culture, and I think it can sometimes change how they see themselves in the military too, but that's another conversation for another time. We won't go into the politics. But yeah, so I want to open the floor for Tiffany and David and anybody else who decides to join in to ask questions. You guys are more than free to chime in. You can just let me know if you have something you want to say. All right. Is that Tiffany? Are you waving? Are you unmuting yourself? All right.
Hello.
Yes. Hey. Welcome. And introduce yourself too before you start. Let everybody know who you are.
Oh, okay. My name is Tiffany Kendrick, and basically I provide expatriate services as well. So if you want to work, volunteer abroad, I also provide those services, and I travel a lot as well. But I have a question for Cha. When that incident happened in Korea with her leg situation, were you experiencing a cultural faux pas? Like, for example, in Thailand, they do not want you to touch the top of the children's head. So I'm just curious, did you ever find out the reason why that person did that? Or I was just curious.
So I thought about that for a minute, and I was like, did I do something wrong? Like, and literally my legs were crossed just like this.
I'm thinking it might have been that.
But I asked the Koreans, and they were like, no, that's okay. No. Like, I thought, is my foot up? Is
right,
like,
that's what I was wondering.
Because, like, I know not to touch, a person's head. And I knew, like, not to put my feet on something. Because, in Korea, you even enter a house, you take your shoes off and everything. Exactly. But they were like, no. And it's just, it was almost like he knew I was an American, or he knew I was other. And he seemed to be angry, because literally it wasn't like I was taking up space. I didn't even have anybody sit next to me. Like, he didn't even really need to be bothered by me. He should just, mind his own business. But yeah, because I couldn't figure it out. But like, my intuition was telling me, like, exactly, like, I felt like I even knew word for word what he was saying. And that was pissing me off more because I didn't know how to respond. And then my Korean friends was like, you should have cursed him out in English. He would have understood, just like you understood what he was saying. And I was like, So.
Okay. I was just curious. Thank you.
I actually found Korea to be very anti-American. I felt a lot of hostility in Korea, more than any other place I've ever gone. And some of my Korean coworkers were saying that it's because a lot of people don't like the fact that the military has had a presence there for so long. Did you experience that at all? I'm just curious.
I didn't. I even remember, like, my 3rd week in Korea, I had this little bike and then somebody stole it. So I was kind of like, I thought Koreans don't steal. They were like, that's a necessity. They need a bike. I was like, really? But I remember walking to work one day, and then all of a sudden I heard, hello. I was like, because I lived in Seoul, but I lived on the outskirts of Seoul. So I lived in this place called Bangwon-san, which is literally means mountain. And I lived like off of the side of a mountain. And so I was the only person who looked like me. And then towards like my 10th month there was like this other little Black girl that showed up one day, and I followed her because I was like, where is she from? Where is she from? Like, I was like, oh, she's African. But I followed her and I was like, where do you live? Hold up, when'd you get here? Because I was the only person. And I just remember I was like walking to work, and I got to the stop sign before, or the stoplight before I got ready to cross to go down this alley to get to my school. And I just heard, hello. And I was like, what the hell? And I turned and I was like, it's the mountain. And then I heard it again, hello. And then I was like, it was this little bitty Korean man that was sitting like in this cut. And I was like, hello. And he was like, how are you? And I was like, oh, now he want to practice English. And I was like, I'm well, how are you? And he was like, hello.
That's all he knew. That was it.
That's all he knew. Yeah.
Okay. But you know, those experiences happen, which I was like, oh, he wanted to talk to me. I wanted to talk to him too. But yeah, I had a lot of those. I didn't really have like hostility, but I can understand if you've been in somebody's country in 60 years, you got 22 literal military bases throughout the country, and the country is not even as big as Florida. Like, really? Like, that might be a problem. And you know, it's a constant presence, and a lot of them really want to be reconnected with their family that's in the north, and they kind of feel like if the military got out the way and America quit doing its bidding, that they would actually be able to connect to their family and be one country. So
yeah, that's tough. That's really tough. I wish I had more opportunity to spend in Korea. I was only there for a month. I did a language camp, and it was really a really great experience. Most of the time I was in Jeju, so I wasn't even on the main continent, but the time I did spend there, it was really wonderful. And I don't know, maybe it's because we were a group of Americans. It wasn't just me by myself like I was in China. They're probably like, there's too many of y'all. What's going on? Why is there 20 Americans here right now?
Right.
David had a question for you, so I'm going to let him go ahead and ask this question.
Sure. Hi, David.
Hey, I had stepped away because this is my second year part of this constituent leadership program here in Washington, D.C. It's under a Fair Budget Coalition. It's like a nonprofit grassroots organization.
Nice.
And we just got different like opportunities like for housing, community safety, different issues that goes on in the district. And we had something we wanted to fill out as far as like our tax dollars being spent and what we don't want our tax dollars being spent on to a chairman named Phil Mendelson. But I briefly heard what you was talking about, and it kind of relates to what's going on with me because, you know, right now at the present time, you know, I'm filing for Social Security due to some things that's going on with me. And I feel so mistreated and so abused here in Washington, D.C. that I don't feel as though that I could work. So I wanted to try to like maybe see if I could get some like type of asylum in Africa, you know, to go back there since I've heard so much good things on that. And I don't know if you know anything about that or anything, but you know, I had spoke to someone not too long ago and they said like that the military or the U.S. citizens are governed by like so much security that they're protected. So what do you feel about that?
That would actually be a good question for Tiffany to answer.
Yes, Tiffany. Because I have very limited experience in Africa. Tiffany has been to Africa. And, you know, that sounds like some Liberia, Ghana. Because, you know, Africa is a continent. So it would really lend to know which country you would be interested in going to.
You
And
definitely have to know that. Yeah.
yeah, because they're all different and they all have different laws and bylaws. And so,
They have
Tiffany.
So there's different paths based off of which country you want to visit. They're going to have certain pathway programs. For example, Ghana, they have a huge program for a pathway back to Ghana for Americans. However, the first item you should do is, since you're already in the DC area, is to go to their consulate or their website, the consulate's website, and they'll tell you how you can go there, or how you can work there, or how you can retire there, whatever your plans are. That's the first step to find out how to do it. Try not to.
How do you spell that?
CONSULATE. So you will Google Ghana consulate, and then it'll tell you either the office or the website, and you start from there and ask questions from there.
I like Nigeria and Kenya. I have been researching them since I've been little, just off of just what my mother has told me, us having a globe and just picking.
Okay, I've been to Kenya, and every country has a consulate or embassy website that you can go to, so you can get the information that you need. Did I answer your question?
You did. I was looking at that.
Okay.
Because what I was doing, I had looked into the president who was from Africa, and I just found out that it was a guy named Mutama Siri Raposo. But he's the president of South Africa, I heard, and that's the embassy that's here in DC. And I had just emailed them and, just explained to them what was going on with me, basically. But I'll look into that.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of times Black Americans, when they are going to Africa, can fall into the trap of having unrealistic expectations. Mm-hmm. And so I always try to tell people, you have to understand that it's not a utopia. Everything is not perfect. Mm-hmm. You may have to give up a lot of comforts. Even people who are in the United States who are low income and considered poor in this country would be considered rich in many of those countries. Mm-hmm. It is not the same. It is a whole different world. And you have to go with the understanding that, you're going to have to adapt to a lot of things. And you're not going to automatically be embraced as being from there, because you're still an American and they're still going to see you as an American. I've spent a considerable amount of time in Kenya and Ghana. Those are actually two of the countries that I work in the most. My preference is actually Kenya, just because I feel Kenya has a more laid back kind of environment. It's a little bit slower pace. I find Kenyan people to be more open-minded, not as conservative as a society as Ghana is. And of course there's regional differences and, some
because that's more east
different
versus west groups. Yeah.
But just in general, that's just my personal experience. But I do think that, going to Africa is a very rewarding experience. And I do think it does give you a lot of cultural insights into your ancestry, which is always a positive thing. It helps you know yourself in a very unique way. But don't think that you're going to go, to Ghana or go to Kenya or go to Nigeria or go to wherever and be automatically one of the people, because it's not going to work like that. Mm-hmm. All right. So any other questions? Well, I have more questions. I can always ask. So, Cha, I'm really curious to see, where you're going to take your organization in the new world. Things are very different. I was actually just looking this morning at all the countries that are barring Americans from entering. It's quite a long list, quite an extensive list. It really breaks my heart. I don't know how long we're going to be in this situation. Because people don't seem to want to act right. So what do you think? What do you think the future holds for you and your work? And, how do you see yourself, I guess, adapting to the new climate, the new realities, and how are you going to transition as we move forward?
So at first I was like, oh my God, my life is done in this realm. So I need to move on and find something else to do. However, that's not showing to be the case, because there are people who obviously are trying to figure out an exit plan, especially for African Americans who feel like,
Yes.
I really don't have a voice here. I
Mhm.
really want to be somewhere where I feel like at least if I have an issue with you, it's not because of race.
Right.
It might be because, economic status, but it's definitely not race. So there are people who are ready to get out, and they're just trying to figure out when that's going to happen. And in the meantime, they want to be planning and preparing for that moment. So right now, I'm just trying to help as many people navigate what it would look like for them to get to the next level of wherever they want to be. And I think this is a great time because you obviously are dissatisfied. And oftentimes people make really rash decisions on where they're going, why they're going, and they don't really have a strategy. They just jump in. And so this actually gives you the opportunity to plan and prepare. What do I need to move to said country? Everybody seems to want to go to Africa. And just like you said, it's not going to be this, oh, hey, welcome home party for you when you get there. That, like, literally, you need to know what you need. And because of COVID-19, things have changed in the meantime. And so you need to know what those changes are, like what shots you are going to need. If you're going to be anti-vaccine, you probably ain't going nowhere right now.
Going nowhere.
So you might want to think about that. And in the meantime, like, are you going to the Caribbean? You can go to the Caribbean, people are going to look like you. But I think just being able to do your research and have a plan prepared for wherever you decide to go. And also to build community now. Like, this is a great time to find out what you don't know. This is also a great time to connect with the people that you need to connect with. So people are still looking for jobs abroad. There are still companies that are still recruiting people. They're just waiting for that right time. And you might be on hold, but I think, the world is going to open up. It's not going to be the same, obviously. You're going to need to know what the rules and regulations of playing this game is. But at the same time, it hasn't stopped and it's actually picked up. And I've kind of been like overwhelmed with all the questions and people wanting to, do research and figure out the best place for them to go after, the gates open. So
Right. I know me myself, I definitely want to go abroad and spend a considerable amount of time, if not indefinitely, definitely some years. Once my son graduates high school, so I have 2 years to plan for that. And I was really wondering, like, how do you begin? Like, if you know you want to be an expat, if you know you want to live overseas for an extended period of time, what do you tell people? Like, how do you suggest they begin that process?
Well, I always try to start from the end. Like, if you want to go somewhere, what does that look like? Like, where do you really want to be and how do you really want to live? Like, you can pick your bags up and throw away all your worldly goods and get to trekking tomorrow. But is that how you want to live? Like, that's not for everybody. You need to be realistic about what is for you and get out the movies. They Eat, Pray, Love. There's a backstory to that,
Yes,
so
it is.
so you need to be real about that. So the starting point is, how do you want to live? And what does that look like? And really get detailed about it. If you want to have servants and live a very plush life, air conditioning, you need to be very detailed about how you want to live. Because if you come to me and you say, oh, I want this fabulous luxe life and I want to, have all these amenities. Okay, and you didn't tell me, oh, I want to go to Ghana. I'm be like, yo, that may happen, and you could possibly have that. How much money do you have? What are you planning on doing? Where are you going to work? And then I start throwing all these questions at you, and then you like, well, that's not really how I thought of it. And okay, get down to the details. And once you have the details, or you really have thought about the kind of lifestyle you want to have, then you can start thinking about what your options are. Where are you going to work? Like I had a young lady who came to me, and she was like, I always have seen myself in Brazil, and I just have this very, very wonderful life in Brazil. And I was like, okay, so tell me a little bit more about this life in Brazil. And as she started talking, I was like, but you just got done in the same breath telling me that you don't want to do this, 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 and this, but you want to live in Brazil, and you're going to have to give up some things. And then you told me you don't want to do the job that you're doing, which actually would help take you to Brazil. So let's go back. And we had to take a couple steps back, and she had to really get clear about it. And then she really realized she didn't want to be in Brazil. Like, so oftentimes it's really about trying to navigate what's in somebody's head and what's in somebody's heart. And your head may be saying one thing, but your heart is saying another thing. And sometimes a lot of people are in denial. And, you know, I'm not talking about a river. I'm talking about logistically, like, what is it that you're willing to give up and compromise? Because you're not going to get everything, at least not the first try. So how do you really want to travel this? And then once you do that, you can put together a plan and start taking, and I try to have an A-B list, like let's put all the wants and all the desires on one page. And then let's turn the page and let's talk about what is it that you can give up. And if you are going to go work for an NGO, your life is not going to be very plush. So you can get rid of them high heels that you plan on. Because I have people who pack like 9 bags, and they think that they're going on like they gonna show up like Sex in the City. And I'm like, yo, that's not about this life. Because most of the part is like you really can only take 2 bags. And I was that person, like trying to fit my whole life into 2 bags. I took 4, but it's gonna cost you. So how much money do you have? And do you have the resources to have this lifestyle? So I say start with an idea. Then I say minimize that and really get serious about what it is that you want. And then you can start creating a plan from there. And that may do some soul searching, especially now that life has changed. It's not gonna be all fairy tale-ish, and you know, I'm going to Paris and find the love of my life. You know, let's get out the movies and let's talk about your life and how serious you are about your life and about where you want to end up, and think of the end first. Like at the end of the day, when all this is over with, what life are you living? Right. And then we can start building from there. We'll build backwards.
That's perfect. So when people are trying to start this process on their own, you know, there's a lot of things you don't always think about when you talk about going overseas. Like, you know, you may go to Ghana and you might not realize that may mean you're going to spend 24 hours with no electricity, because sometimes there's electricity rations and there is no electricity. Are you prepared for that? If it's 80 degrees outside, what you going to do? There's just a lot of things I think that, particularly as Americans, you know, you only eat organic food. That's not available everywhere in the world. Some places don't have organic food, you know. It's just, I don't know, it's just so many like little tiny things. Like, for example, when I was in China, I like to play pool. I didn't know until I went to the pool hall, girls don't play pool in China. It's not an appropriate place for a female to be. So I went with a group of people, you know, boys, to, you know, protect me from anybody who may try to say anything about my being. I would have never thought about that. You know, when people are trying to start this process on their own and trying to, you know, really get a good grasp of all of these little nuances that may not come readily to mind, particularly as an American, what do you suggest as some good resources of information for them?
Well, Google is your friend, but then Google can also be your enemy. So, and the funny thing is, people don't know what they don't know. which will end you up in like expat jail somewhere. And I know, because I ended up
I know about
in
the expat
jail, like almost deported on some, like, really? I
Scary
didn't
stuff.
know.
Yes.
You know, you can't just jaywalk sometimes. Just like, you need to know like the rules. And unfortunately, if you don't know what you don't know what to ask. That's why you should go hire somebody like Tiffany or myself, or and quit being cheap, or, you know, just throwing your life out there, because there are people who are out here. There's a lot of expat coaches. There are a lot of intercultural coaches. There are a lot of people that have this niche, and you can find them on blogs. Most of us have blogs or podcasts, but narrow down where it is you want to go. So if you want to go to China, find somebody who has experience going to China. Like, I can't tell you about Ghana. I can tell you about certain things and how to get there and do the research, but you might want to talk to somebody who is experienced in the place that you want to go to, and read everything and try to have a clarity on what your expectations are, what you are willing to do and what you aren't willing to do. Again, going back to that roadmap to what the end looks like. But for me, I found a lot of expat books that had checklists, and I have some on my website that actually you can download, and it's like, do you have this? Have you thought about this? You know, what are your eating habits? You know, are you a person who has to have luxury? If you are, these are probably not the places you want to go. So start thinking about those things. And again, you really need to know yourself. And a lot of times, you would be so shocked how many people come to me who don't really know themselves. They literally, after you start digging, on the surface, they think they do. But when you start digging, they're like, oh, that's just not going to be for me. Well, and I've had people who ended up in China. They had this like fairy tale, and I'm talking to them, and I'm like, I don't know, you know, you like
tiger,
that.
hidden dragon.
but everything you told me is telling me you probably don't want to go to China. I've been to China, and I didn't live there, but that just based off of what I saw in that week, I'm like, it don't sound like it's for you. But they went and they found out in 24 hours this is not for them. And then what's your exit strategy? Now you just wasted a lot of, I mean, you had an experience, but you wasted a lot of time trying to get somewhere that's not for you. So I think hire the experts. Hire somebody.
That is the takeaway. Hire the experts. Yes, yes. And of course, I definitely feel like the service that you and Tiffany both provide is extremely invaluable, because you're right. Sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And if you don't have access to talk to a lot of people, you know, not everyone is comfortable going up and talking to a stranger. And even, you know, doing online searches, you may get misinformation. So yeah, definitely. I do believe that, you know, finding someone like yourself that has these expertise is extremely important. I want to start wrapping up the conversation, but I want to ask you if there's one thing that you think someone needs to ask themselves before venturing into an expat life, what would it be?
Who am I and what do I want? Because if you don't know who you are, you probably don't know what you want. And those two questions are important. And I think a lot of times people find themselves in really bad situations because they really haven't thought things through and they don't have a strategy. They just woke up one day. I mean, I do know somebody who woke up one day and found them a job in said country and packed their bags, and they ain't had no conversation with nobody, and they end up at the airport, and then they end up in a country. It's in that particular person, it actually worked out for them. However, it's so many things that could have gone wrong. And if you are a woman, like, are you really thinking about your safety? Because there's so many things that, like you said earlier, we're disillusioned about because we're American and we come from this privileged thought process. Whereas in certain countries that just don't flow. You just don't want to just be all willy-nilly as a woman in certain countries. I mean, you shouldn't just want to be all willy-nilly in America because it might land you in the wrong place. But I mean, you have a little bit more leeway with that. So I guess the question I would ask, that would be the first question, is like, who am I and what do I really want? And you know, what's the experience that I want to get out of this? Are you just trying to explore the world? Because that looks very different than I want to live and be in this particular culture and get everything I can particularly get out of this culture. Do you want to be nomadic and go from culture to culture? There are people who do that. Do you want to only experience Greek food? You know, you really need to be knowing yourself. And sometimes people don't. They just have like, I watched Under the Tuscany Sun. I watched it too. And I was like, that's part of my life. I mean, I felt something. But at the same time, I'm not going through a divorce and just going to land in the country and just go from there and buy, you know, said house. That's fairy tale-ish. So be realistic about what your expectations are. And then you just, you know, kind of, then it starts the other questions. Like, can I afford this? What do I need to do? Because Tiffany good at this. Like, she'll find her job on the, she'll be like Tiffany is the hustler, so she'll be like, we eating today, you know, but you gotta, and you have to be resourceful. And sometimes if you are only accustomed to a certain thing and you haven't lived outside of that, then it's difficult. You find yourself in difficult situations. So if you don't really know yourself, it's kind of hard to know what the next questions are going to be.
Right. That's very true. I do think, though, you learn some things about yourself as well.
Yes, you do.
Through this process that you didn't know. But, you know, I truly believe, you know, travel and seeing the world and learning new cultures, it's just such an eye-opening thing. I mean, even for me, you know, it does give me a lot more appreciation for being American. As frustrated as I get with the things that Black people go through in this country, I know it could be a lot worse. You know, you're hungry, there's a food bank. There's a church that got a food bag. There's always some resource. You know, pretty much anybody can be whatever they want to be in this country with not as many restrictions as you might find in other places. I mean, even the internet. You know how many countries people don't have free and untethered access to the internet? You know, that's something that we take completely for granted. You can't just go and Google whatever you want in a lot of places. You know, if you have a grievance with the police, you better not say anything. You may just disappear and that'll be the end of it. You know, so there's a lot of things that we really do have in this country that, you know, even though I do want to be nomadic and I do want to probably live overseas for an extended period of time, I still know that this country affords us a lot of privileges that do not exist in other places, and you have to be prepared to accept that. I am prepared to accept that. I don't think a lot of people are, and you know, then we go back again to why having someone like you and Tiffany, you know, this was supposed to be Tiffany's hour, but Tiffany's skills, you know, your skills are so like neck and neck. And I know she's a diva when it comes to this sort of stuff. I have to give her a shout out as well. And Tiffany, put your link in the chat box so that I can send that out when I send out the email about this Zoom chat. You know, that's why it's very important for people to reach out to you guys, because you can't play with this life. It's something that you have to take seriously.
Yeah, and I mean, it's wonderful to learn from experiences, and the more experiences you have, the better, you know, or well-rounded you are probably going to be. However, oftentimes there is a easier way to get somewhere and a quicker way to get there. And oftentimes we make life a lot harder than what it needs to be because we just don't know what we don't know. And you just out here, you know, if that's your motive, you just want to be, you know, off the grid, living the life, doing you, okay, do you that way. But if you really want to have a plan and you want to relocate for a set amount of time and experience this particular culture, then there's a way to do it and do it where it doesn't cost you a whole lot of money. There's a way to do it where it doesn't, hurt you because you didn't know you ended up in a country and didn't know you needed a visa. Like, it's nothing worse than arriving at an airport and you can't get in. It's nothing worse than leaving a country thinking you coming back and you can't get in. And so to kind of prevent those things from happening, then, why not hire somebody who that's their expertise and they do it culturally, and I talk to a lot of even corporate people who, and there's levels of expats. Like, if you need everything to just be perfect, you probably need to be a serious, like what they consider a true expat, being under a corporate regime or corporate structure where they're footing the bill, they're sending all your stuff when you arrive, everything is perfect.
That's how I roll.
You need a job.
I have about that struggle.
Or a contract that all of that is in the contract.
Yep.
Tiffany know about them contracts. But you need to make sure your contract covers some stuff that you ain't even thought about. So you need to holler at somebody that understands that even you go as a corporate entity and you find yourself in a bad situation where your life is in jeopardy. How do I get out of this contract? And how do I get all my stuff that I just transported? How does that happen? Yeah. And those are things you're not really thinking about because you're like, oh, they got me. Probably not like that. So it's a different beast. And you just need to know the rules of engagement, and they change country to country, continent to continent. And so just have all of the questions that you can't have enough questions. There's always going to be something that you missed, and then some of it is just going to be a learning experience, and you have to be willing to be patient. And that's one of the biggest things that Americans don't have is patience when they get somewhere, because they think everything just happens for us, right? But you sit and wait, because there's some countries that, especially high context cultures, that are like, yeah, we get to it when we get to it. Oh, that's that stack of paper over there. Yeah, your visa might be over there. So do y'all open at a certain time? No. Oh, yeah, it's like lunchtime. So if you don't know that, you can be very frustrated, because here, when you open at 8, you open at 8. And if you open at 8:01, you got words. But in other countries, 8 is, suggested. So you just need to be ready for that.
I definitely wish I had someone like you guys when I was younger and first starting out on this path, because there's a lot of things that I learned way too hard, and it wasn't fun, it was scary. And luckily, things worked out for me and I'm here, but that might not have been the case if I didn't have people who were looking out for me. And I think that, as people now have greater reach to find people like you, we do have the internet. There was no internet, not really, back when I first started doing this stuff. There's no excuse to not reach out and get help, and end up in a place where you don't want to be, in a situation that's not good for you. And I even know, even for me, even with all the travel experience that I've had, I have never lived abroad for an extended period of time. And when I do decide to do that, I'm going to be calling you guys, because I'm going to need some guidance. And I think that even for people that are experienced travelers and have lived abroad, every new venture is a new experience, comes with new challenges. And even for people that are experienced, they still should consider reaching out to someone like you, because having guidance is absolutely, important, particularly in today's world. We have so many new challenges that are unprecedented. I think people need to take advantage of the resources that are available to them and the services that you guys offer. So on that note, I guess I will wrap the conversation. Does anyone have any final questions before I close? No? Well, thank you
for sharing, child.
Thank you
thank
so
you.
much
Thank
for
you.
Thank
taking
you.
Tag
time
team
to talk to
Tiffany.
us and leaving your precious little baby boy behind.
Yes.
Yes. Next time, bring him so we can all say hi, Langston.
Nah, he's a showstopper. I don't know. I can't compete.
I bet. And thank you so much, Tiffany, for joining us. Thank you, David, for joining us as
You're welcome.
well. I hope that both of you enjoyed the presentation and that you enjoyed the conversation. And I look forward to seeing you guys on another talk.
Okay.
Great.
Alrighty.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.